Hello and welcome to Fireside Fairytales. If you've never been here before, my name is Rory, and you're watching Varietal Literature's YouTube page, a cozy little corner of the internet for narrative. And what we're going to do here tonight is we're going to read a story about crows in Cornwall. Now, just to make sure I'm not misleading you, if you clicked on this and you're like, I want a historical account of an actual war between crows and the citizens of Cornwall. This is not historical, this is folklore. So, I mean, maybe there's something like this historically, but I wouldn't count on it. As far as if you are not watching this live, you can jump right ahead to the story if you want. There will be timestamps down in the description below. Take you right to the beginning of the story. Tonight is a shorter stream, but if you want to enjoy it with the company of others, there is a live chat going right now that is growing a fine little crop of potatoes. We're conversing at the moment. Feel free to join in and talk about the stories as we write if you are here live. Yeah, we will be doing a shorter show tonight because it is getting warm. So it's July and August. They're very warm. It's only so long I can go without the fan on. With that said, I see that for whatever reason, the... Sorry, that was somebody was asking me something. I see that the crowns are back, and they shouldn't be. They're not on my YouTube interface anymore, but they are on my OBS. So I'm going to have to figure out what happened there, because I definitely turned them off after last time. I really hate these crowns. Anyways. Let's get on to the story. We won't bog down in that. Just know that toxic engagement tactics are not my choice. This is being foisted on me by YouTube. Don't engage if it's not fun for you. This stream is never going to be famous, and that's not the point. Gia says, I see no crown, so I'm fine. Oh, interesting. I wonder if it's something that they are controlling on your end, whether you have to turn it off. That would be annoying. Because I just don't want it as a culture element. Okay. I don't really have any great lead-in to today's story other than to say it's another story from the Cornish, the North Cornwall Fairies and Legends book that we started... Well, it didn't start last week, but returned to last week after several years of not reading it. I just kind of still wanted to read from it. Normally, I don't read from the same region 2 weeks in a row. I try to break it up, but that's what we're going to do today. It is not a terribly long story, but it's not a super short one. I suspect will be around a half an hour today. Lizzie Rose says, but your stream should be famous, Rory. Well, you're very sweet. But when I look at the things that are famous, I mean, I get it. I get why I am where I am. So this is a story about crows in Cornwall. I don't think I really need to say much more than that as a lead-in, other than to remind folks what I said last week. Cornish culture is one of the original sort of Celtic tribes, like the Welsh, and obviously Scottish and Irish. It's not the one talked about as much, but one of the mainstays of it is pixies, or piskies as they call them, which we told some stories about last week. This week is not really about piskies, though we will probably do more stuff about them. This week is about crows and their hostile relationship to what I assume is a Catholic church. I don't remember if it says if it's Catholic, but that would be my best guess for the era. All right. So our first story tonight is called The Impounded Crows. And it comes to us from North Cornwall Fairies and Legends, a book that you can get just about anywhere because it's in the public domain at this point. A small boy called Jim Nancaro was sitting one day eating a pasty on top of the Crow Pound, a large enclosure built on a common by the far-famed St. Neot to impound the pilfering crows of the parish that bears his name. Just pausing for a moment here. I don't know if you folks have had a Cornish pasty, but I loved them growing up. They were a mainstay at a bakery in my area. They are a meat pocket, usually with vegetables and gravy in it, and the pastry. They're just a hand pie for meat, but they have a very specific shape. Whoop. Jim was the son of a thatcher, and he was waiting to accompany his father to a distant hamlet to help him thatch a cottage. He looked a nice little lad in his clean white smock and nankeen breeches and soft felt hat, much the worse for wear, shading his bright young face and clear blue eyes. And as he was waiting for his father and eating his pasty with his mother, which his mother had given him for his dinner, he saw a crow flying over the Gunzion Downs, of which the Crow Pound Common was a part. And as he watched it, he thought of the pilfering crows, which, according to the old tale, little St. Neot impounded there from morning till evening on Sundays, that his people might go to church undisturbed by the fear of the great black thievish birds which ate up the corn sown in their fields. Jim had often heard this story from the old people of the parish. Whenever he saw a crow, he wondered if it were a relation of the wicked crows their patron saint had impounded. The crow that the boy was watching was flying in the direction of the Crow Pound, and when it came near, it alighted atop the wall quite close to the lad. The crow was lean to look at, and scanty of feathers, and such a sorry-looking bird that Jim broke off a piece of his pasty and threw to him, which he ate as if he were starving. "One would think you were one of the pilfering crows of St. Neot's time," said Jim, tossing him another piece of his pasty, and to his surprise, the bird answered back, "I am." "Are you?" cried Jim, staring hard at the crow. "Well, you look ancient enough to be one of those birds, though I have always wondered that our patron saint lived ever so long ago, when Alfred the Great was a little chap like me. But perhaps crows tell lies as well as pilfer." "Ah, if I am not one of the identical crows St. Neot was unkind enough to put into his pound," croaked the big black bird, eyeing Jim and his pasty with his bright little eye. "I am a descendant in their direct line. I truly am," as the lad stared as if he did not believe the assertion. "Those poor impounded crows learnt the language of men during the long hours of their imprisonment, listening to all the little saints and his people said about them outside the pound, and they passed on their dearly bought knowledge to their children through long, long generations." "Then ye are quite high learnt," said as the old Grantford men say, cried Jim, gazing up at the bird in open-eyed amazement. "I confess I am," returned the crow with due modesty, "especially in the old Cornish tongue, in which I can swear to any extent. I am not going to use bad language now," as Jim took up a stone to throw it at him. I had to pause at that part of the story. He was going to huck a rock at a bird in case it swore. "You would not understand it if I did. I am also high learnt in the needs of the body, and I shall be ever so grateful for a bit more of your pasty. It isn't nice to have an aching void inside one's little feather strum jacket." I suppose it can't be, said the lad, dropping the stone and breaking off a large piece of his pasty to toss to the bird. He was a feeling-hearted little fellow, and the crow's quaint appeal, it touched him. And the sorry-looking bird with his bedraggled tail had had most of his pasty, rather. I have a good meal for once in my life, and am full fed, said the crow. And when the last of the pasty was eaten, and he perched on a stone, starred with stone crop, and fluffed out all the feathers he possessed, and looked with a comical expression at Jim. I am better fed than Saint Newt after his poor little meal of fish, he continued, still eyeing the boy. And I am feeling so comfortable that I am inclined for a chat. Are you? Cried Jim, who thought this great black crow was a wonderful crow, which he certainly was. I don't know what to yarn about. I do then, answered the bird quickly. I suppose you have heard the old widow, how the little Saint Newt put the poor crows into this pound. Whittle just means tale, like story. Yes, I've heard about it from the grandfermen and the granny women here at Churchtown, said Jim, turning his face towards a little village close to the church, which he could just see from where he was sitting. But they never made much of a story of it. Didn't they? Then perhaps you'd like to hear the crow's version of the old tale, said the crow. It will tell you that their morals were not so black as the farmers in the parish made out to the holy man. I don't mind if you're quick about it, said Jim. I'm going to a farm with my father to help him do some thatching when he was finished his dinner. No, I cannot, simply will not, could not be driven after such a heavy meal of a pasty, croaked the crow. And if I may not take my time, maybe I won't tell it at all. That's a picture from the icon or the YouTube icon there of a little boy eating a pasty in a field next to a low wall talking to a crow. As you like, cried Jim with fine indifference, but the bird was anxious to tell the whittle, and he began. We crows always considered it within our rights to take what we could, said the crow. And pilfering, as the farmers hereabouts were pleased to call it, was the only way the crows had of picking up a living, and they watched their opportunity to take what they needed to satisfy their hunger when the farmers were not about. But back in those days, in those far-away days, when Saint Newt dwelt here to try and make people good, the times were dreadfully bad, especially for the crows. The people were all tillers of the land in those days, and lived by the sweat of their brow, as crows did by their pilfering. There was no other way open to them, and the farmers had their eyes on the land, and on us poor hungry birds from dawn to dark, except on rest day, which of course is Sunday. And the only chance the crows had of filling their stomachs was on that Sunday, when the people went to church. Well, the starving crows looked forward to Sunday as only poor starving birds with empty crops could. And the moment one of the older crows gave the signal, which he did in the crow way, they all flew off to the corn-sown fields and had a regular feast. My word, didn't they feed? They picked out with their sharp beaks every grain of corn they could find, and when the farmers found out the hungry crows had eaten it all up, all the corn they'd sown, there was the black man to pay, and the poor crows were anathematized from one end of the parish to the other. But the farmers re-sowed their fields, but they took good care to watch and see that the crows did not rob them of their toil. And they were always about the corn-sown land, Sundays as well as weekdays, and the crows had to go supperless to bed, and little Saint Neot had to preach to bare walls. The saint was greatly distressed at his people's neglect of their religious duties. He told them how wicked it was to stay away from church. The people said they were sorry, but declared it was the fault of the pilfering crows. "The pilfering crows!" cried the holy man. "What have the crows to do with your stopping away from the house of God?" "Well, everything," answered the farmers. And they told little Saint Neot that whenever they sowed bread corn in their fields, and the wicked crows came and ate it all up, and that if he could not prevent them from doing this wickedness, they must keep away from church and watch their fields. "We and our children must have bread to eat," they added, which was true enough. True for crows as well as men. By the way, just as a note here, I'm not sure if that's what's happening here, but I do think corn doesn't literally mean what we think of as corn here. I think they're talking about wheat. I don't remember the details of it, but I do know that there is a convention mostly in England or there, where that was a more general term that eventually became more specific. That's why they're talking about making bread with it, I believe. I don't think they're talking about cornbread. I think they are just talking about bread. But I'm sure somebody in the chat who knows a ton about this stuff can fill it in. Which was true enough. True for crows as well as men. Yeah, there you go. Lizard Rose. Corn in Britain just means grain. Yeah. I remember I learned that because in Lord of the Rings, they refer at one point to lembas bread being, oh my god, what a dork, being made with corn. And then I looked into that, and apparently it's just the convention of grain. The holy man was very much aggrieved to hear the cause of their not coming to church, and he said he would devise some means to prevent the crows from robbing the fields whilst they were attending to their worship. Saint Neot was as good as his word, and it was noised about in the parish that he was building a great square enclosure of moor stone and mould about half-mile from the church. When it was finished, he told his wandering people, well, it was pounds for the crows, which he meant to impound on Sundays from dawn till dusk, so that the farmers might come to church and worship without having their minds disturbed by the fear of those black little robbers eating their corn. There was a fearful thing to do among the poor hungry crows, though, when they learned what Saint Neot had done. And although they knew they were within their rights to steal when they were hungry, a point I agree with, and they were always hungry, poor things, They were sorry they ate up the corn the farmers had sown, and every crow looked forward to coming rest day with fear and trembling. Well, Sunday came as Sunday will, continued the crow, and before the sun had risen, little Saint Neot made known his will to the crows that they were to come to be impounded. Rah! And such power had the saint over the beasts and birds that the crows had no choice save to obey. And long before Saint Neot's bell rang, out to call his people in to worship in the little church which he had built for them by the aid of his 2 dear men and 1 hare team, all the crows in the parish came as they were bidden to be impounded in the crow pound. And my gracious, what a lot of them came! They were crows of all sorts and conditions, all ages and sizes. They were great grandfer and granny crows. They were great grandfer and granny crows. They were great grandfer and granny crows by the score. Granny crows by the 100. Mammy and Daddy crows by the thousands. And as for the children, the great-great-grandchildren, they could hardly be counted. Even poor little baby crows, just able to fly, were there. The crow pound was chock full of crows, and all the place was as black as Saint Neot's gown. And as for the noise they made, it was enough to turn the holy man's brain, but it didn't. The little saint did not expect to see so many crows, it was certain, though he had expected a goodly number. By the big enclosure he had made, and the old tales say that, when he saw so many birds, he exclaimed with uplifted hands, "My goodness, what a lot of crows!" And he looked around of this great assemblage, all in respectful black and open-eyed amazement. The people who came flocking to the church when they heard that the crows were safe in the crow pound were almost as astonished as Saint Neot to see such a big congregation of birds. The church was too far from the pound for the crows to hear the little saint preaching, but when the wind blew up from Churchtown, they could hear the singing. To show you they were not so bad as the farmers made out to the holy man. They croaked as loud as ever they could when mass was sung. And were as silent as the grave during the time when Saint Neot was preaching. Sorry, my background has decided to stop backgrounding. Give me a second. There we go. And every year, from sowing time till the corn was reaped and safe in the barn, the crows were impounded. Every Sunday from early morning till evening whilst little Saint Neot lived. Is that all? Asked Jim, who listened to the crow's version of the old tale till it was finished. Yes, answered the great big black bird with a croak. And when he had said that, he took to his wings and flew away as fast as he could, fly over the Gunsian Downs, the way he'd come. Whew. That wish-looking crow did not tell the old widow half bad, said Jim to himself as he watched the bird fly away. Shouldn't I like to have seen this old pound full of crows? Must have been terribly funny when Saint Neot looked in upon him and cried, "My goodness, what a lot of crows!" Must have been as good as a Christmas play. There, father's coming. That sharp-eyed old crow must have seen him climbing the hill. And that's the tale. has been told. Plytech says that passage was amazing. Well, thank you. It's good to meet you. I'm not sure if I've seen you in the chat before, but if I have, I'm sorry I forgot. And if I haven't, welcome to the chat. Thank you for watching. Lizzie Rose says Rory has an excellent crow voice. Well, thank you. I don't know how common crows are where you are, but we got a lot of crows around here. I, like most people, I think, are quite charmed by crows, even though they really are bastards. Anybody who's lived around crows will know two things. They're extraordinarily intelligent, terrifyingly so. And then the second thing they'll know is that when they have their eggs, they are territorial jerks who will dive bomb you. And if you respond to it, they will tell their friends, and all their friends will dive bomb you. Little gangsters. Also, Uncle Kitty, good luck on your surgery. I certainly hope it goes well. I did see some of that. Jumpstore says, have you made friends with your crows yet? I haven't. Other members of my family have. I don't live with my family here, but I remember my mother was a bus driver. And when you're a bus driver, you run this like the same route. But then you have these points where you have to stop, sort of to deal with traffic and stuff, timing points. And so they're usually the same places. And there was one place I remember over about a year she was running the route. There was a bunch of crows there, and she would just feed them out the window, and they learned nice old, bus driver lady was coming. And so, yeah, they would bring their friends, and they would hang out, and I think even brought her some stuff at some point, which is the thing crows do. But yeah, you can befriend crows. Jumpstore says, I tried, but my apartment's maintenance men kept picking up the peanuts I left out for them and throwing them away. That's too bad. He doesn't appreciate the crow exchange. Has anyone else in the chat made friends with crows before? As far as myself, I do like birds, actually. Actually, I had a funny little thing. I go for a walk usually most days. And went for a walk yesterday, and a little finch, not normally a very social bird, jumped up on the branch next to me and just started staring me in the eyes and cheeping right at me. And I assume it was like protecting a nest or something, but it was very funny. He was actually quite close for a finch. Again, fairly skittish birds, but it was very cute. Uncle Kitty says crows are a lot smarter than people give them credit for. I think they're supposed to be like 3 or 4 year old kids in their intelligence, which I definitely believe. But yeah, they have cultures and they can pass information down. Uncle Kitty says they can hold a grudge. They can. Intergenerational grudges. Rather famously, very interesting creatures. Corvids. Are they corvids? Are crows corvids? Or is that... Are they just... No, they're corvids. Like, I know ravens are. Lizzie Rose says, I haven't made a friends with a crow yet, but I will. That's everyone's assignment for the summer. JS says he was being tough, Rory, protecting their nest. Yes. It was funny, though, because you don't normally see finches doing that. What it made me think, I'll say this and then I'll let you folks go. What it made me think of is that scene in, is it Sleeping Beauty or Cinderella, where she gets decorated with the birds. I constantly blend the two in Disney movies. But it made me think of that scene where the birds sing at the window, and recontextualize as the birds are like she's taking clothing where their nest is, and they want to attack her. I don't know. It wasn't super funny, but it made me laugh. Lizzie Rose says, crows are corvids, along with ravens, magpies, and I think rooks. I didn't know magpies were corvids. Cool. I mean, we don't really have magpies here, so I know very little about them. Are blue jays corvids? Oh, really? Oh, man. I need to look up what a corvid is, apparently. Oh, wow. Tammy says my kids raised a baby pigeon and lived for 15 years. Like a wood pigeon or just like a regular pigeon? Jump Source is Cinderella. Okay. I grew up with a cockatoo in my house. Although he was a little bit crazy. He had something, like genuinely something wrong. And I've spent some time around houses that had like budgies and stuff like that. Mostly though, I grew up with dogs and I mostly have cats now. All right, I'm babbling, and you know why I'm babbling. It's because it's super hot here. I timed this well. I am sorry for the shorter streams, but I just had to concede that this is just too hot. When it's cooler, I'll do an hour stream. Thank you very much for saying hello there, Plytek, if I'm saying that correctly. And Uncle Kitty says all cockatoos are Rory. But as for the rest of you, I'll keep the fire going. It feels weird to say it in summer, but I've committed to this closing outline. Thank you everybody for watching and lurking, and if you can see crowns on your messages, I'm sorry. Engagement isn't important, connection is. Anyways, Jump Store says he's not crazy, he's just a little unwell. Anyhow, I'll keep the fire going for you. You folks have a good sleep.